Well!
Pamphlets turning silver into gold. Tom Paine's got a pen like a lightning rod, shaking up the pews in the house of God. Ink is wet on the printed page with actors stepping on a brand new stage. Hear the percussion of the printing press. We're cleaning up this colonial mess. That golden crown is a heavy weight. It's a rusted relic of a dying state. While you're bowing down to a man in a wig, when the spirit of the people is twice as big. It's just common sense, baby. Can't you see the light? It's just common sense, sugar. We're gonna set it right. Break the chains, lose the king. Let the bell of freedom ring. Oh, yeah. It's just common sense. Now listen close to the argument he's laying down about the foolishness of a hereditary crown. Just because your daddy was a king of old don't mean you're entitled to the people's gold. And ask for a lion, it's a royal disgrace. Nature don't care about your noble race. If he's a fool, then the whole land bleeds. We're planting better revolutionary seeds. That golden crown is a heavyweight. It's a rusted relic of a dying state. While you're bowing down to a man in a wig, when the spirit of the people is twice as big. It's just common sense, baby. Can't you see the light? It's just common sense, sugar. We're gonna set it right. Break the chains, lose the king. Let the bell of freedom ring. It's just common sense. Now government at best is a necessary evil, a badge of lost innocence for the people. We need a little order, we need a little soul, but we don't need a tyrant in total control. Keep it tight, keep it right, keep it right, keep it right, keep the power in the light. The sun never shine on a cross so grand. It's time to take a stand for the American land. A small island ruling a continent. No, it's time the red coast to pack up and go. The period of debate is closed and done. The battle for the future has just begun. Get your musket, get your groove. It's time for the colonies to make a move. It's just common sense, baby. Can't you see the light? It's just common sense, sugar. We're gonna set it right. Break the chains, lose the king. Let the bell of freedom ring.
It's Dave Does History in Hour 3 of a Tuesday morning on Bill Mick Live. It is the 13th day of January, 2026. Our headline at BillMick.com, Do's and Don'ts, and Dave taking us to the do's and don'ts that led to the formation of this great nation. And today's episode is entitled, and I love it, Common Sense Funk. I will urge you to catch Dave's podcast of this hour. Once it is done, some very interesting stuff that Dave's been able to do as he's creating his Dave Does History and What the Frock podcast and all. So make sure you catch up with Dave Bowman on all of those. And today's the one day I didn't put a link up to your stuff because I was busy getting the show stuff together, and I forgot to grab it and put it up there. Sorry, Dave, but it's there.
Philadelphia, in the winter of 75 and 76, that would be 1775 and 1776, was not just the place where rebellion happened. It's actually the machine that makes the rebellion louder. Now, look, we can romanticize about Boston all we want. We've talked at great length about the city of Boston being the heart and soul of the rebellion, but really, by this point, 1775, early 76, much of that ideology, much of that frustration, much of the discussion has moved to Philadelphia, which is really the center of the country. I know that sounds weird to our ears, but Philadelphia is the big city. It's where the Congress has gone to meet. It's also where ideas stop being parlor talk and start becoming objects. Philadelphia has something that literally no other city in North America has at this point. It's not a huge city by any standard, but it has 31 that we know of legitimate businesses, printing businesses, print shops. 31. All of whom, of course, are competing to print stuff, all of whom are busy getting ideas, getting stuff laid out. And of course, it's not like today, with a word processor. It's a lot of work. And this is a working city. It's not a court. It's not a garrison. It's a place where tradesmen gather, merchants, apprentices, men who know the weight of tools in their hands. And the ideas only matter here if they could be built, copied, and moved on. Philosophy that can't survive contact with a pressman's hands doesn't last very long. Because, and I want you to listen very carefully to this, because I know we're talking about 1776 here, but rebellion is not born in speeches. It's born in repetition, in the same words appearing again and again and again until they, in the minds of the people you're trying to reach, stop sounding radical and start sounding obvious. Philadelphia has the presses to make that happen. Literally more than 30 print shops. Thank you, Ben Franklin. These are not symbolic presses. They're not gentlemen printers dabbling in pamphlets as just a hobby. These are industrial operations by the standards of the 18th century. Heavy iron presses bolted to the floor, type cases worn smooth by use, men who worked 12-hour days setting letters backwards so that the rest of the world could read what they were putting out. And when common sense hits the streets of Philadelphia on January 9th, 1776, it was not floating on a cloud of enlightenment thought. I know we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about, the philosophy and the Enlightenment. This isn't that. Common sense is none of that. It lands with a thump. The printing press is not a metaphor. It's percussion. You listen closely, you can hear it. The clack of the type being moved, the scrape of the ink balls rolling across, the grunt as the platen comes down, metal striking paper, again and again and again. It's almost a rhythm you can set your watch by. The ink is still wet when those pages are folded, sometimes still tacky when they're sold. This is not literature meant to age gracefully. This was writing with urgency built into the process. You can smell it. Oil, ink, paper dust, sweat. This is not the silence of a library. This is noise. And noise is what turns dissidence into movement.
Dave does history. Dave, it sounds like this work of these presses, essential to spreading the word, best way to get it out and to get it out and spread far and wide.
It's basically the only way. I mean, you can talk, but you got to get these ideas out there. And how long would it take one guy to talk to everybody in the country? A while, because he didn't have radio. And that guy, of course, was Thomas Paine, who he literally had a pen like a lightning rod. Now, it's not lightning because he's refined and fine and all that kind of stuff. He's lightning because he's out there exposing himself. He doesn't come wrapped in Latin. He doesn't come wrapped in footnotes. He doesn't speak like a man auditioning for posterity. Paine speaks like someone who's been standing in the rain with everybody else, cold, tired, and increasingly angry that the roof was owned by someone 3,000 miles away and not taking care of it. That's the mistake people make, I guess, when they call Thomas Paine a philosopher. Philosophers explain the world. Paine didn't do that. Paine translates the world. He took arguments that had been locked up in elite conversations and dragged them out into the street, shaking them until loose change fell out. He shook the pews in the churches. He shook politics. He shook assumptions people didn't even know that they had. He asks questions that sound obvious only after you pay attention to them and actually hear them. Listen, critical thinking. Why should an island 3,000 miles away rule over a continent? Why should birth, who you are when you were born, decide authority, who's in charge? Why should loyalty survive abuses? These are not abstract ideas. These were daily irritations for the colonials. And they were finally given words sharp enough to literally cut. And when those words needed a body, they found one in a print shop near 3rd and Walnut in Philadelphia. Now, this was a fellow's name by the name of Bell. Wouldn't make any sense if it was Ball. Robert Bell. Robert Bell is not a polished patriot. In fact, the best way to describe Robert Bell, the printer, is he's an opportunist. He's a printer who has a nose for controversy and a willingness to gamble. His shop sits in the bloodstream of Philadelphia, where carts rattle by, voices overlap, and news moves faster than the authorities really liked it to. This is the shop where discontent stopped being private and becomes a signal. Paper went in, something alive comes out. Bell understood what Paine understood. Ideas do not matter until they move. A pamphlet that goes unread is just an expensive piece of paper. But common sense, when it's published, does not sit still. It couldn't. Bell printed it very aggressively, loudly, unapologetically, and in fact was pretty much the only printer in Philadelphia that would take it on, because this was pure treason. And Bell was like, well, but it'll make me money. So he printed it. Not as a polite suggestion, but as a challenge. The presses responded like a drum. Common sense does something new in the American political life. It goes viral before we even had a word viral, at least the way we mean it today. It was read aloud in taverns by men who could barely read at all, passed hand to hand until the corners were torn and softened. It was quoted by memory by people who had never owned a book in their lives. They argued about it. They shouted about it. They endorsed it. They cursed it. And they discussed it. It traveled faster than any rebuttal could, faster than any proclamation could. It traveled faster than fear. And that's how you know that common sense mattered. The British couldn't confiscate it fast enough. Loyalists could not answer it cleanly. Even its critics could not stop talking about it. Every attempt to contain it basically Streisand affect it and just help spread it more. It didn't ask permission to enter the conversation. It kicked the door in and then stayed.
It sounds like this was what it took to move the ideas of patriotism from philosophical to practical.
It really is. It's the moment when the people realize that the argument is no longer theoretical, no longer something discussed by eggheads in Boston. It's the moment when ordinary people understand that history has stopped asking their opinion and started assigning them a role. Up to now, you could listen, you could nod, you could complain, you could go back to work. After this, you cannot unhear it, you cannot unknow it. The question has been placed in your hands. Do you act, or do you let others act for you?
The thing I like about what we've hit so far is that Robert Bell let capitalism went out over any philosophical concerns he had. There's a story in that, too. We continue in moments.
It's a take on history you won't find anywhere else. Dave Does History on Bill Mick Live.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram at WMMB Radio. So a little capitalism, Dave, and a lot of spreading the word about the philosophies of forming this country. And it sounds like Thomas Paine hit a nerve.
Oh, he hits a nerve, and he is just getting started. This is what Paine really understood better than most people, is that once authority gets questioned, it rarely survives intact. And it's why his words land like glass breaking. He's not going to nibble at the edges. He's not going to be polite about this. He's going to go straight at the load-bearing wall of all of this stuff, which is the hereditary monarchy itself. Paine does not argue that King George III is a bad king. That actually is a safe argument. Oh, we just don't think he's a good king. You know, it's Charles II all over again. Kings come, kings go. Paine is going after the system. He argues something far more corrosive, that the system itself of hereditary kingship is unnatural, irrational, and even dangerous, even if it happens to sometimes work as advertised. Nature, he insists, does not recognize bloodlines. Storms don't ask you who your father was. Fire does not pause and say, that family, they're this, we shouldn't burn them. Ability is not inherited like passing down silverware. Wisdom does not travel reliably through the womb. Monarchy, hereditary monarchy, asks people to believe the opposite, that authority can be bred, that legitimacy can be transmitted by accident of birth, that a man can be born fit to rule millions simply because of who his father was. And Paine does not treat this tradition as worthy of reverence. He treats it as an insult to ... common sense, a phrase that he chose very carefully. And then he goes for the jugular. He uses a phrase that makes polite society kind of go, ooh. But ordinary readers took this phrase and they went, yeah. He refers to the hereditary king, and kind of King George III, as an ass for a lion. Lion being, of course, the British emblem. And he basically says, no, this guy's just an ass. Savage clarity, no cushion, no apology, an unmistakable image. A nation expects strength, judgment, courage, a lion at the helm. Hereditary monarchy promises that, but actually delivers whatever chance happens to produce. Sometimes a lion, sometimes a donkey, sometimes worse. And the people are expected then to pretend that the crown changes the animal rather than the other way around. And Paine says, no. Nature, he argues, does not produce by lineage, doesn't promote by lineage. It selects by fitness, by capacity, by response to circumstances. To chain an entire society's fate to bloodlines is not stability. It's gambling with loaded dice and then trying to call the outcome sacred. It's not abstract philosophy. Colonialists lived under the result. And once Paine had said it plainly and printed it, it could not be unsaid. Common sense doesn't merely oppose a king. It tells readers how to interrogate power itself. And once people learn that skill, they don't forget it. This is why governments, you can see this today, fear ridicule more than resistance. You can fight resistance, but ridicule dissolves reverence. An ass for a lion did exactly that. It stripped away ceremony and it revealed the actual animal underneath. And after that, the crown looked much lighter, rustier, Thorns look shakier. Authority looks provisional. And that's the point where return becomes impossible. Paine understood this. He understood that he wasn't just attacking King George III. He was teaching the entire population how to look power directly in the eye and ask a question it had never been encouraged to ask before. Why you?
And we pick up Dave Does History in 60 seconds on WMMB. Dave, you said everybody was talking about this once it got published. Were the loyalists actually buying this pamphlet and, in essence, financing their opposition?
Everybody that had 2 shillings in their pockets was buying this, and the people who weren't buying it were borrowing it from the people who did. Everybody was reading it. By the time it actually gets to London, people in London are buying it. It's a scary argument if you happen to be King George III or any kind of hereditary king, because Paine really tears that argument apart. He reveals the crown is just really it's just a rusted relic kept in place by habit rather than by reason.
How dangerous for him to not mince words as he did.
Oh, this is treason. This is treason. This is absolutely treason. And if he hadn't been in Philadelphia, if he'd have been perhaps in Boston, he probably gets arrested and sent back to England. But
what makes Philadelphia different then?
The British weren't there.
Well, that'll do it.
Paine really, he rips into this argument. He strips the crown of its mysticism, and he finds nothing underneath that deserves any kind of reverence at all. No divine glow, no natural order, just power preserved by ceremony and fear. He didn't just criticize rulers. He redefines government itself. Government, he says very plainly, is not sacred. It's functional. It's a tool. And like any tool, it exists because something is broken. It's as he calls it, a necessary evil at best. And he means both words, by the way. Government exists because people fail, as will be written later on by Madison. If men were angels, we wouldn't need government. But they're not, so we do. Because passions flare, because disputes arise, because everyone doesn't behave the way they should. If humanity was perfect, government would be unnecessary. But they're not, so we need this necessary evil. Rulers are no longer being elevated to figures dispensing out orders from above. They're managers of a problem that never fully goes away. Their authority is conditional, it's temporary, and always suspect not because power is always evil, but because it's always dangerous. He names King George III as the problem, not as a bad advisor, not as misguided ministers, not temporary mismanagement. The crown itself, the whole idea of hereditary kings, is bad. And the whole argument of common sense becomes, stop being about trying to fix Britain's government over us, and let's just replace it. Quiet, inevitably. It's not yet independence, but it's no longer loyalty. And it is just common sense.
And that's where we're headed as we wrap up Dave Does History. When we continue on Bill Mick Live, keep it right here on 92.7 FM WMMB. We're back in moments. We'll let you talk to Dave as well when we continue on Bill Mick Live.
There's no time like the present. Call Bill now at 321-768-1240.
Our final segment of Dave Does History on a Tuesday. Nice to have you with us here on WMMB. So, also, don't forget our McNugget today at 5:30 during Hannity. We're addressing the new entry into the governor's race. And this weekend on the Florida Roundtable, we're talking with political scientist Chris Muro about the Florida legislative session. We even talk about this governor's race and some other things going on politically in the state of Florida this weekend on the Florida Roundtable. So quite a stir, Dave, caused by what Thomas Paine has laid out here in very plain and certain language.
It's just common sense, Bill.
Didn't push a button somewhere. That's the one I needed. Go ahead.
It's just common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Ideas are cheap. I mean, let's face it. Ideas are easy to come up with. The problem that Paine has is that ink is not cheap. And that's the lesson running beneath everything that he wrote and why his work matters when others faded away. You can have the sharpest argument in the world, but if no one is willing to set it in type, pull the press, and face the consequences, this was treason, it stays where the power prefers it to stay, which is silent. And Paine understood this instinctively. This is why the most dangerous sentence he writes is not an insult to the king or a complaint about Parliament. It's simply the line that he closes the door with. Quote, "The period of debate is closed." Period. It's not bravado. It's a historical declaration. Debate assumes legitimacy on both sides. Debate assumes that you have time. It assumes that persuasion still matters. Paine was saying something far colder and far more final. The argument has already been made. It's already been absorbed. It's already been accepted by the people who mattered most. And continuing to argue about it is no longer thoughtful. It's just evasion. Once that line was printed, neutrality stopped being a respectable posture. You had to choose. Then came the argument that sounded rebellious only because people were used to hearing it framed that way. Paine stripped it down to the drama, and he treated it as physics. A small island ruling a continent was not immoral in his opinion. It was absurd. It was against nature. It was a violation of scale. Mountains don't answer to pebbles. Rivers do not reverse themselves out of courtesy. This was not an emotional appeal. It's natural law. Distance alone makes British rule irrational. Add ignorance, delay, arrogance, indifference, and the structure collapses under its own weight. He wasn't asking readers to hate Britain. He was asking them to notice reality, common sense. And once people begin to see the arrangement as unnatural, obedience stops feeling virtuous. It starts feeling foolish. And then he did something even bolder than that. He took that whole argument and he lifted it off of American soil, and he widened the lens. He pulled the camera back. This isn't just about taxes or representation or colonial grievances. This is a grand cause, not America's cause, but all of humanity's. A moment when ordinary people had the chance to demonstrate that government could be built on consent rather than inheritance, on reason rather than ritual. And that's why common sense travels so far, so fast, even to London. It doesn't flatter its audience. It conscripts them into participating in history. It tells readers that what they're living through mattered beyond their farms, beyond the little ports they worked in, even beyond their families. That future generations would look back at them and judge what they did with this moment. We talk a lot about Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Hancock. But what about Charles Holt sitting in a tavern in North Carolina somewhere, 16 years old? And he's hearing these ideas. What about your ancestors? What about those people? Because without them hearing these arguments, without them realizing that history is judging them at this moment, none of this happens. The spirit of the people is always the engine. It's always the thing that those in power fear the most. Don't believe me? Go visit Tehran today. It's unpredictable. It doesn't respect titles. It doesn't wait for permission. Loyalists tried to dismiss this as mob sentiment. British officials treated it as noise. Paine treated it as fuel. And once it was awakened, it did not go back to sleep. But none of this happens without somebody willing to print it. And that's where the story kind of slows down. And if you caught Dave Does History yesterday, you know that Robert Bell, the printer, is not the hero of the story. He did print the book, and that's why we have it. But that's about all I want to say about him today. The Bell of Freedom is not necessarily the Liberty Bell, at least not yet. It's a guy by the name of Robert Bell who was willing to take a chance, albeit for financial reasons. But he was a man with ink on his hands, debt on his mind, and a press that didn't care whether the words it printed were safe or not, only if they were legible. The awakening of the continent of North America, did not begin with a proclamation or a vote. It begins really with a decision to print something that cannot be taken back. Before there was a bell in the tower, there was a bell in the print shop. And that is enough to wake the entire continent.
321-768-1240 if you want in with Dave Bowman when we continue in just a moment here on Bill Mick Live. If you're in the market to buy a house or to sell one, and I've done both, and it's not a process I treasure. It is laborious. It is a world that I don't operate in. You probably don't either. And if you don't, when you buy or sell that home, you want someone who knows and understands what's going on. Let me introduce you to Barbara Zorn. You find her at soldbybarbara.com or just Google Barbara Zorn and you will find all you need to know. She's got a history of success in the real estate market here in Brevard, and she knows and understands the market. She also has a proven marketing strategy that has buyers lined up looking for homes in this region. She knows how to reach them and point them in the direction they need to go. Do you want Barbara selling your house? She also knows the houses that are available and what's going to work for you and yours. Do you want her helping you look for your house? I think the answer is yes. That's the reason the only recommendation I'll make when it comes to realtors is Barbara Zorn. That continual marketing that she does has those people in place. Whichever end of the deal you are on, both buyers and sellers trust Barbara Zorn. Like I said, it's a complex process, and it takes a pro that knows and understands the market, has an experience and a track record that will get you where you want to be, which is either selling your home or buying and getting settled in that new one. Call Barbara Zorn, 321-532-6262, or Google Barbara Zorn. Dave, let me go back and explore with you for just a minute. What made this so popular so fast? It sounds to me, one of the things that would appeal to me, it takes it out of the realm of let's talk about how government's done and say, let's look at how we're living, and this doesn't make any sense.
It made no sense. And in essence, what Payne is doing is he's saying what everybody's already thinking, but has been afraid to say for so long. They've been conditioned, trained, taught. They've been preached at that you don't think this way, because to think this way is treason. To think this way is evil. You know, the kings believed that they were appointed by God. And so there's a thought process that says if you oppose the king, you're in opposition to God. Well, you know, that's a powerful argument to people that were steeped in that sort of faith. I think for me, the reason why this becomes so popular is because it is common sense. An island shouldn't rule a continent. And in fact, we talked about what if King George III had moved the capital from London to Boston in 1763? Maybe things are different then. He didn't. He chose to maintain this hereditary ruling system the way it was. There's a line or two here in the introduction that I think for me captures the real essence of what's going on here. Perhaps, Payne writes, the sentiments contained in these following pages are not yet sufficiently fashionable to procure them general favor. A long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of being right and raises at first a formidable outcry in defense of custom. But that tumult will soon subside. And listen to this. Time makes more converts than reason. That's the essence of common sense. The ideas that he presents withstand the test of time. The idea of a hereditary monarch makes no sense. Well, how many people think that government today is sacred? How does our government react today to being criticized and being mocked? And these are exactly the same arguments that Payne was making. Power does not like to be mocked. It doesn't like that because it would much rather just crush resistance. Resistance is easy, but being mocked is not not something it likes. And those ideas, I think that's, one of the strengths that we have is we don't really seem to have much problem making fun of our government. Mocking is good, and it reminds, I think that too many of us treat government as sacred rather than the necessary evil that Paine described it as. And that's what it is. It is a necessary evil. If we were all angels, we wouldn't need it. We're not. It's just common sense.
The sun never shine on a car so grand. It's time to take a stand for the American land. A small island ruling a continent. No, it's time to red coast to pack up and go. The period of debate is closed and done. The battle for the future has just begun. Get your musket, get your groove. It's time for the colonies to make a move. It's just common sense, so baby. Can't you see the light? It's just common sense, sugar. We're gonna set it right. Break the chains, lose the king. Let the bell of freedom ring. It's just common sense. It's just common sense. It's just common sense. Common sense.